Okay, awesome.
Okay, welcome to Queer Burner's 4th Rainbow Leadership Summit session. For anyone who doesn't know that's listening to this now or later with the recording, Queer Burners is a nonprofit founded on Burning Man principles and dedicated to cultivating inclusive spaces for queer people and allies by fostering community and leadership. Today, we'll be focusing on RIDE, which is radical inclusion, diversity, and equity. In the interest of accessibility and reach, this discussion is being recorded and uploaded to the Queer Burners website and to the Facebook page. And then for those of us in the call, we'll encourage any questions to be posted in the chat or to be shouted out during our Q&A time at the end. Before we dive right into today's topic, I want to introduce myself and then give each of our 3 amazing speakers, Tia Coleman, Prince Baron, and Ariel Vagosin, a minute or 2 to highlight their connection to RIDE and Burning Man, sort of why we're all here having this conversation. So I'm Ruth. I use she, they pronouns. I also go by the playa name Tara. I've had the honor of being a part of the Queer Burners board for the past 18 months or so, serving as our clerk. But more personally and grounding my connection with RIDE and why I'm here helping facilitate this is my identity as a queer polyamorous demigirl and my professional focus on equity work in education, particularly elementary education. My first burn was in 2018 and sort of blew my mind. It was insanely transformative. And I found this self-acceptance that changed everything for me. And so that's why I'm passionate about being here and making sure that Burning Man is accessible for everyone. This will be my first year serving as a temple guardian, which I'm really excited about. And I'm hopeful that today's discussion will help the Burning Man community in navigating this return back to playa after this bit of time. I really hope that it can be with intentionality about our practices so that we can really actualize radical inclusion for everyone and not just a select group. I'd love to hand over the virtual mic now to Tia for your introduction.
Hi, my name is Tia Coleman. I am a regional contact for the Las Vegas area. I'm also what's called a meta-regional contact, which means I have a much broader scope of interest when it comes to serving the regional network, not only locally, but also globally. I am also an artist. I paint, I draw, I act, I sing. Because of all of these things that I do, I understand what it's like to be an artist in our community. Also because I love leadership and I want to be part of positive growth and enhanced change in our community, I became a regional contact back in 2004, which makes me, at the time, I was the first Black regional contact in the regional network for at least about 13 years. Also, another thing that I really do appreciate about our community is that we know how to solve problems from within. So I'm also a member of the Conflict Support Meta Subcommittee, where we help communities within the Burning Man network figure out how to resolve the issues that they have. All right.
Thank you so much, Taya. And let's now hand it over to Ariel for their introduction.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be with all of you today. My name is Ariel Vagosin, and when I perform, I use the name Trixie Lamont. It's great to be with all of you. I started burning in 2005, and in 2009, I co-founded Gender Blender. We serve the trans, non-binary, genderqueer, gender non-conforming, and anyone that's questioning gender community. We also welcome people of all genders always. And we're really excited that we've been on Playa for so many years and that we continue to grow. And I feel like we are a natural connection to the RIDE initiative and to creating more diversity and more radical inclusion on Playa. We have always been rooted and founded in the concept of social justice and in the concept of facilitating workshops that help people expand their thought around all kinds of things, including gender, but also how do we tackle some of the biggest isms that we're faced with: racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, ageism. How do we tackle all those issues and really create the world that we want to see? So that's always been Gender Blender's root and core element, is working on those issues and trying to use Burning Man as a platform to create change. And the other big initiative that I'm a part of is I co-founded the Queer Dome, which is queer-centered psychedelic harm reduction, making sure that queer people feel safe and have a safe space to go when they're having challenging psychedelic journeys. And this work is also connected to the work that I do full time. I run an organization called Gender Illumination, and we are a nonprofit that serves the trans and non-binary community through mentorship, leadership, healing, and ritual. And through Shine Diversity, I also teach workshops on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Thank you so much, Ariel. It's amazing to have you here. Finally, Prince, you've got the floor.
Hi, hi everyone. I'm Prince Barron. I'm camp lead at Yummy Rumination. This year will be my 12th year on Playa. And I also am honored to be on the RIDE Advisory Committee. And I also help with the Cultural Course Correction Committee work that was done since 2019. My full-time job, I'm an executive assistant, and in my spare time, I'm constantly working to create community, bring community together, and I'm very excited about today's conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to have all of you here today to really dive into this together. The goal of today's session is for us to really provide our burner community, both the queer burner community and beyond, some tangible ideas on how we can really support each other and how we can support our diverse, intersectional queer community. That's including, but not limited to, trans people, non-binary people, and people of color at Burning Man, who may or may not have always felt that same level of inclusion that their whiter, straighter counterparts may have had. So that's our goal here today. Most questions will be open to all of the speakers. It would be fantastic to have back and forth dialogue as we're processing, reflecting, and sharing expertise on these topics. Things may go off in a tangent, and as long as that is useful and helpful to our burner community, then we can run with that tangent. And then we'll bring it back when time requires. So our first question today is going to be quite broad and is directed to help the many non-queer focused camps at Burning Man. Then after that, we'll have the topic of conflict resolution, and then finally safety on Playa. Then we'll open it up to any questions that our speakers have and any questions that those in the call right now have. So our first question is, how are non-queer camps able to serve the queer community? So we're thinking in that lens of inclusion. Any of our speakers can jump in first, and we can go any direction with this about how non-queer camps can be tackling this to make sure that they are a space that people feel more comfortable in.
Well, I'm happy to jump in there. So I think the first thing is just to make sure that we are creating a space, non-queer camps are creating a space that are comfortable and that are inviting, that are not about shaming or about, there's a lot of heckling that happens at Burning Man. And a lot of times that heckling, especially at bars, can be very triggering. And you gotta just maybe think like, what is your purpose and goal behind what is coming out of your mouth? Is it to endure people to you into your camp? And think about how it would come off to someone who's identifying as queer, to a queer person. I'll start with that.
Yeah, I love what you just said, Prince, because I just want to share a story that happened to Gender Blender in 2009, which is that so before we decided that we really needed to be in what I call the queerborhood and what some other people call the queerborhood, which is like a series of camps that are all together, as you all know, the first year Gender Blender was actually placed on the Esplanade, which is like an amazing placement and showed how much Burning Man supported us. But the problem with that, and the reason that we chose to never do something like that again, is because our neighbor camp was really challenging, and our neighbor camp was actually really hurtful and harmful to us. And they actually put up a orange trash fence in between us and them, and they were just like making fun of us and being rude to us and questioning people's bodies and saying inappropriate comments about trans bodies. And so that's why we decided that we can never be in that kind of a location again, and that we always needed to be protected and in the safety of other camps that are queer, that would understand our trans identity and our non-binary identity. And so I think that camps that are non-queer, it's like, how are you actually making space for trans and non-binary people and queer people? And there's a reason that the queerborhood exists, and I kind of want the non-queer camps to understand that, to be like, oh, what does it really look like for us to create safety in our camp, for us to say, yeah, we welcome queer people in these camps, and then maybe it wouldn't be queer camps and non-queer camps, right? Like there's still this real thing happening, that our neighborhood still exists for a reason. And so I'm very curious to see non-queer camps take a stand on that and start being more loving, more accepting, more of a safe space. I also think that non-queer camps can donate and can really do this gift economy situation, right? Because a lot of the queer camps and a lot of, if you think about, especially Gender Blender, especially Beaverton, especially camps that we have people who are systematically oppressed. I think this is also true for KVIVA and POC camps, right? It's like you have people that are literally systematically oppressed that make less money. And then you have wealthier camps that are usually not queer, usually are predominantly white. What would it look like for those camps to say, you know what, we're going to start gifting before we even get to Playa. We're going to give money to people that give money to these camps that don't have as much money. And I just want to name that there are certain camps behind the scenes that are already doing this, but I would love to see more camps, right? Like I would love it to be just becoming like a more natural part of the system, the gift economy.
That's a really interesting aspect to think about it, Ariel. I really like that you brought that up, thinking about how I think for people who identify as a burner or feel like Burning Man is a special part of their year and their identity, and that they need to be there, thinking about how we can bring the principles outside of that week. And when we go somewhere and for a week, we're gifting and we're doing all of these things. But when we look around on the playa, I mean, one of the first things that I noticed my first year was how white the playa was. The people on the playa are just, and I was like, I was shocked, for 5 seconds, until I thought about how expensive it is to go to Burning Man, and how this, these like layered intersectional oppressions can impact the community that gets to Burning Man. But what if those who have more power and privilege, like many camps do, what if they enact those principles year round to help change that? So I love that as an idea for those camps that have those resources.
If I can chime in real quick, I'd like to kind of piggyback on what you just said. There's a challenge that has to be laid down here for non-queer camps, which is, I mean, we have the stress tests. So you're used to doing the same thing every year, but we know we burn every year, we burn differently. Why not challenge yourself to try the stress test, a portion of the stress test, to see how the current policies in your camp line up against that stress test? It's a great way for you to put a mirror in front of yourself and say, you know what, we could be more adaptive. Is the name of our camp appropriate? Is how we have made our camp appear to be welcoming, is it appropriate? Small changes can help non-queer camps reassess how accessible they look to others who are not like them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call to action about having that systematic process of reflecting on these different elements. I know that there's, there's often discussion about different camps' names, the names of activities that they may run, or as Prince said, about the way that some camps heckle. The heckling is sort of part of Burning Man to a degree, but how you heckle, that makes a huge difference. And when you said these things, did you think at all in advance about how these comments would affect different marginalized populations if you're yelling it at them? Or was it only appropriate to be yelled to certain people?
Well, that's the snark test. I mean, I've been living in a world of snark since 1998, since I've been burning. So I think to myself, there are folks who feel that's their right to be able to basically act with snark. But everything should, there's a point in time where you have to use a sense of reason. We grow up, our whole community has grown up. Black Rock City has grown up. So how we do our snark and how we converse with each other in some ways is going to have to mature with the times. It doesn't mean we can't have fun. It doesn't mean we don't poke fun at things, but it's having enough of a moral compass to know that might have worked back in 2004. That doesn't work right now. And that's all of us working to educate each other on just the language that we're surrounded with at this time, and knowing the difference between a hurtful statement and one that's delivered with humor. If it's delivered within the community itself, that's humor. From an outsider who has no context about what's funny within your community, that's hurtful.
Yeah. And I also want to say that another thing that non-queer camps can do to serve the queer community is to not, to be aware of not putting your emotional journey on other queer people at Burning Man. Because a lot of times people have these realizations and then they want to stop you, and then they want to share with you what their sorrow or their growth moment has been. And you're just wanting to be invited into a space and to be allowed to exist in that space as a co-equal inhabitant of that space, just exist without being called out. Without having to be like, oh, Black person, oh my God, I have this story to tell you. Oh, queer, oh my God. I messed up a couple of years ago and I did this terrible thing and I want to spend 30 minutes of your time and tell you about it. And I want you to tell me that I'm okay. Give me permission to be okay. Tell me. No, don't do that. Go talk to someone else. Go find an ally and have that moment with them, and then just show up for your queer person. You see someone who's fabulous, tell them they're fabulous. That's wonderful. But then just come up and be like, hey, you want to get a drink? You want to be here? Let's hang out. Let's, just hang out and let them enjoy the space that you are in. And that's it.
I also think, I was just going to add, I wanted to share an example of a camp that I saw do a really good job, which is there's a camp that has a theme of foamation. They're like a foam camp. They're always doing these amazing showers. And one year they took on gender as their theme, and they collaborated with Gender Blender so that the front of their house was all these beautiful workshops and images and art, all about just opening up and learning about gender and learning about gender diversity and celebrating trans and non-binary and genderqueer community. And so that's the first time that I've ever seen a camp outside of the queerhood take something like that on and be excited to do that. And I think that other camps could do something similar, right? Like other camps could say, we want to collaborate, we want to start doing workshops here, or we want to do a performance here, or we want to do some kind of art that celebrates people that are often marginalized. And then it would be, instead of just having it in certain sections of the city only, right? Like, because I think it's like accidentally our city is a little bit segregated, right? So I think the way that that would shift is if other camps started coming forward being like, yeah, we want to partner. What does that look like? What does it look like for us to partner? What does it look like for us to host an event on our camp that uplifts queer community? And I think that's true for camps that, I want to say that that is also true for camps of any background, right? If you're a majority white camp, how are you uplifting people of color in your camp? What are you doing? Could you partner? Same thing for like, there's just so much, I feel like there's so much separation. So how do we start bringing people together?
Because that's our North Star, right? Is to bring everyone together and for us to all be able to coexist, feel safe, have a great time, and there not needing to be a queer hood, multicultural hood, where it's just we're all just one hood and we're feeling good. We're not there, and we have to have these spaces. But yeah, like snap on that area. So good.
And if I can just go whoop, whoop on what you said and double up in that, it would be really great in some ways to have, I hate to say it, I don't want to say a pamphlet, that's not exactly what I mean, but a guide in some ways that says, how would you like to help a queer camp? Well, blah, 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 blah. Now, I know that seems really rudimentary, but some folks, they like that kind of stuff. They don't feel like an original thing can come from them. They just need a prod or an idea dropped in their head. And it might seem like you're leading someone, but somebody might really appreciate that because they may have nothing in their background that informs them on how they can engage with a camp that has people who are not like them. They don't know where to start. And I don't know what model we might use in order to transmit that information, but I do think it's worth a try. Let's just say it's a piece of art stuck out in the middle of playa that says, how do you connect with blah, blah, blah? Well, this is what you can do. It's anonymous. Nobody knows who put it out there, but it will get a message across to someone in some way. Because yes, I know we want to try to have that open space where we don't have the neighborhoods, but in some ways I like the fact that we have these safe spaces where people can go and discover who they are and work out the kinks and then run out to the greater burner world and engage, because some folks need that kind of hand holding, but or that sense of protection. But until we get there, it's our job to educate. How do we educate? You know, we're creative beings, we can figure that out.
Yeah, I want to build on what you're saying because I think part of it is also what are we doing off playa, right? So something that Gender Blender started during the height of the pandemic was a grant program called the Black Lives Matter Trans Grant Program that gave direct financial aid to Black trans people for housing, food, medical necessities. And the way we went around fundraising for this was to go to people who go to Burning Man and say, listen, Burning Man's not happening, it's 2020. Can you take some of the money that you might have put to Burning Man and put it towards this grant? And something that I think is really interesting is that all of the money came from queer camps. And I know because, you know, I was tracking, right? Like I have a spreadsheet. So it's like, I actually know who donated what and where the money came from and how this grant was done, right? And so there's something about that where I'm like, wait, but I spoke many times in many places that wasn't just a queer community. So how come non-queer people didn't say, oh, this is also part of us, right? Like what I'm saying is there's something that happened where queer community said, those are our people. Of course we're going to donate because those are our people and we're not going to let them suffer. We're going to be there, right? But how come non-queer camps don't see us as their people? So something also has to shift when we talk about education and mentality so that people actually feel connected, right?
Agreed.
And the other thing that I've noticed is another great example of how queer communities always taking care of each other is I just did the Trans March in San Francisco and Boz was, you know, amazing, right? They had the bus there and they're rocking it and the speakers are on the bus and it's awesome and the music, right? It's like I've never seen a non-queer camp show up with their resources at a Dyke March, a Trans March, a Roe v. Wade March, right? It's like, these camps also have resources, right? They also have art cars or sound systems. So how come it always has to be that the queer camps are always taking care of each other and that non-queer camps don't show up? What would it look like for them to say, oh yeah, of course we want to be at that protest with you, marching with you. We have a sound system too.
Mm-hmm.
I think this brings up some really interesting things in terms of the elements of the different neighborhoods we have at Burning Man and how we can have our safe spaces, but not because we need them, because it's not safe elsewhere. Like we may want to keep our queerhood because it's fun and it feels nice and it's like really good to go in a camp that's queer and it's a bit of a breath of fresh air sometimes. But you don't want it to be a breath of fresh air because other places were not inclusive or had like, you know, you had microaggressive or not even micro experiences. So I really like where we're going with this, and these different ideas on how other camps could build solidarity through collaborations and also through year-round support of the community, which leads into our second topic of conflict resolution. You know, as we're thinking about the challenges that people have had and the treatment in queer and non-queer camps, and that example, Ariel, about when your camp was right on the Esplanade, and that sounds awful, you know, and to be essentially pushed out of such a visible space, because that's not safe for the members of your camp. So when we're thinking about some of these things and these varying levels of like conflict, how do we navigate issues, find common ground, or find solutions? That's sort of my next question for us.
I'll just start off by saying that, and I feel like for those who have been marginalized, this is just what we have to do just to make it through a day. And so, you know, it's somewhat I think I take that to Burning Man because, you know, we're building this intentional city with an experimental city to try to create a better world that we can take these values, take these ideas and put them back into our everyday lives. And so I try to hold space for the fact of, you know, where I was 10 years ago. I was never someone who would have did what, you know, the guests that violent communication. But, you know, I internally know there's been a journey that I've gone through to where I'm at today. So I try to hold space first within my mind, as a queer Black person, that people are arriving to Burning Man at different stages of their journey. And therefore, that is not a reflection of Burning Man as a whole, as a concept, that just because I have this one bad experience, that this is all Burning Man. Because Burning Man is just taking people from the default, you know, from our normal world and putting them out here in the desert. I think that's important. And I just want to start off the conversation by saying that. And then from there, you know, we just do the work of, you know, sometimes we have space for it. Sometimes hopefully allies are there. And so I just think it's really important that as allies witness these things, if they can step up and take the reins to do the education, to do the work, when they see it, and to be our protectors. That is so appreciated when I don't have to do the education of people, for people.
If I can just kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Prince, I totally understand the element of wanting our allies to be able to step up and, you know, come up and offer support and language and present imagery that shows, look, we are here for you. In truth, I know most people feel, once again, back to the point of being uninformed and frightened of not knowing where to go and not having the resources, because they come from their own world to the playa with a perception about what they've heard about Burning Man. And if you notice in a lot of the information that previously has been put out about the Burning Man event, you don't see necessarily a lot of queer imagery. I know for years, being a person of color at the event, I didn't see anyone who looked like me on the website, and that would often cause me pain, because I would think to myself, I know that I'm here. I hope that others who can, you know, will think that there are people like me here and they'll want to come. You know, it's about having representation on the website and on our individual websites, and having links that say, we are burners. All kinds of people burn. If you have, and some people might think, oh, I'm not going to run into anybody who's not straight, or maybe they're just pretending to be gay while they're there at Burning Man, because there was always that playa, I can't remember what it was called, but there was this kind of behavior that kind of used to exist where guys would say, hey, I wore a dress, so therefore I'm okay with someone who's gay. When in truth, that's not, I mean, I can't really report on that, but I'm just saying that's how some people have thought. And I think having examples of queer camps on the Burning Man website, more information put out there in general, really pushing the inclusion aspect of what we're trying to do as a burner community can ring a bell with folks to say, oh, I might have to turn my perception meter up to be ready to encounter and deal with folks who are not like me. I deal with conflicts all the time as a member of the Conflicts of Work Committee. And I hear about conflicts that occur at different events in different communities. And you would be surprised by, there's just, I would say on some levels, a lack of awareness that people can be offended by things. There is the concept that we're all burners. It's all kumbaya, we all get along. We share a burner ethos, yes, but we are still individuals within that. And it does require you and us as a community to do a little bit of work. So when we talk about, one thing that you had mentioned, Prince, that I just want to quickly tap on is we're talking about someone coming up or people coming up and putting the burden of, or their whatever they're feeling at the time about, let's say, a transformational experience they've either had by meeting a gay person, by meeting a Black person. You know, I've had the experience of somebody trying to touch my skin just out of curiosity from another country. So how do you navigate that? Well, I'd like to think we might have to start to create these spaces within our camps that allow people to come up who have questions in a non-judgmental way, in a way to educate. I know that may seem very simplistic, but at least it's a start. It offers kind of a, we're welcoming you. We're welcoming your questions, you know, without judgment, you know, bring it on. That might be a place to start.
Yeah, I love what you just said. I think that Burning Man could do a lot because you already have a certain system in place, which is the Rangers, that could help with conflict resolution. And I think there could be additional training that not just Rangers get, but maybe there's people that want to decide they want to be part of this training, and maybe there's a new name that develops, right? Not just, it could be Ranger and there could be another name that's like the conflict resolution team. And I think Rangers do this in a lot of ways, but I think there could be like additional people, and maybe you get to like wear a certain button or something so people know that you're part of this team. And I want to say that people make mistakes all the time, right? And so what we're trying to do at Burning Man is not say you're wrong, you're bad, you're terrible, you're shameful, or you're canceled, right? But rather, how do I call you in and lovingly show you this is where you've gone wrong and hold you accountable? So it doesn't mean that you're not accountable, right? It doesn't mean that like there's nothing happening here. It just means that we're actually going to hold you in this process and say, this is the way you've hurt someone. This is how you've harmed someone. Can we work together to change this and fix this? And I think also there's groundwork for this when we think about consent and we think about all the work that the BED has already done around this and around consent and around what happens when people break consent, what happens when people take photos without asking, what happens when people touch people's bodies without asking, right? Like Burning Man's done a lot of work around that. There's still so much work to go, right? I really would love to see this become the 11th principle, consent. I think there's a lot more to go with this, but I feel like maybe there's some kind of a intersection of how do we all work together on this, right? Like conflict resolution, the consent piece, how do we combine forces to be like, what is the next step of training people so that there's a way to deal with conflict in real time as it happens, especially when you're talking about people saying things that are along the lines of racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, all of that. How do you in real time fix some of those mistakes?
I love that. Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I just, that phrasing of, you know, calling people in rather than calling people out. And how do we help for people to feel, you know, empowered to do that? Because we want allies to be calling out things, right? To be having these hard conversations and to feel like they're able to. When I think about this, I'm thinking there's on playa, there's off playa. And now that we have camps released, you know, we have a lot more information about what camps are going, what camps are providing as we're getting closer. And I'm sure some of us will come across offensive naming of camps. Now, this is a chance for us to think with a little more time than those in the moment things that occur on Playa, where you make the decision to, acknowledge and identify what has been offensive and about what was said, and trying to educate from a place of like love and caring and growth. But in advance of being at Burning Man, when we see that camps have these plans, and they do not sit right, maybe it is, a camp that is has named something in a way that feels transphobic or feels racist or feels, is opting into an ism for their own benefit of a party and a gift for Burning Man. What do we do in advance?
Oh, I have to chime in on this. I know this experience directly, what it's like to camp next to a camp with a blatantly racist name, and have the camp, they'd long-term been there. They'd been there for years. But if you don't have a large population of people of color, they may not have camped near anybody who realized that name is truly offensive. And I had to engage in a conversation with them to get them to understand why. Found out it was based on something they had seen in a movie, which is why they named their camp that. But either way, once you're informed, look, that is not going to work. From a number of, if you want people to feel welcome, you may want to reconsider this name next year when you come to Burning Man. And to your point, Tara, it was my hope, because I've mentioned this happening to me previously about 2 years ago when we were on our diversity call. It was my hope that somehow, as camps start to be named, when placement is put together, somewhere in there, there is, I don't want to say, because it's not about censorship. This is about education. This is about letting folks know we want you to name your camp something fantastic, but do be aware that some names are offensive to other people. So educate yourself when you go to name your camp. And I don't think that's wrong. This is not about, I'm not trying to censorship, because I personally, that's one of those things at Burning Man, I have my opinion about it. I mean, this is a free and open place. As long as you're not dealing with racist, homophobic, offensive names, you should be allowed to be a creative being. But at the same time, you have to have some civic responsibility in how you name your camp. That's one of our 10 principles. Please consider that.
Yeah, I want to build on what you just said, because I really appreciate that. I think we've all seen names of camps that have been hurtful or harmful. And I want to just say that something that I love Lizzo. She's like one of my favorite artists. And so I just want to uplift Lizzo in this moment, because she just came out with this song, and people there was like a moment where there was a word that was inappropriate that was in the song that was hurtful to a specific community. That community alerted her. They said, this is harmful to people with disabilities. She immediately took the word out of her song, like the same day. Right. And she just came out with, right. So I hear what you're saying about like, oh, maybe next year you could change your name that moment on Playa. Right. It's like, you could just, why is that the name of your camp? Like, let's do it right now. Like, let's fix this in real time. And so I just want to uplift that, like, watching her do that was inspiring to me, because she immediately apologized, changed the word in the song. And it was like, let's do this. Let's keep it moving. It doesn't have to be so hard. Right. Like, it's like, that was like a perfect example of how someone can be accountable, can make change in real time. So I think when I see camps that are just like holding on to these names that don't work, or holding on to cultural appropriation after somebody, especially someone who's Indigenous, has talked to them, it's like, well, then what are you doing? Right? Like, you could be changing this in real time. Like, what's with the holding on to the name, or what's with the holding on to certain imagery?
Sure. Absolutely. And it's like teaching people to be adaptive. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Prince.
No, I was just going to say, I was just going to echo your comment about the civic responsibility. Really, I find that, we're here out in Burning Man. We are, let's say we're here, we're clear. But that's what in my head. But we're out here to build this experimental city based on these 10 principles. So anytime we can go back to those 10 principles and let people know you know, this is why I'm coming. This is where I'm coming from, and have that conversation on Playa, even before Playa. I mean, this just came up. I'm copied on an email that just came up with another camp, and someone was triggered by the name of their party. And so, we're going to have a conversation with the camp. And I know the person who created the camp and who created the party. I've been to the party and I've had a great time at the party. And I'm all like, but okay, fine. Let's just, keep it evolving, keep it going. But I do like what you're saying, that I do like the non-censorship, making sure that it's, there are things that are going to be offensive to people that are out of the realm of racism and isms and things of that sort. That's just Burning Man. So that just might happen. It's going to happen. And it's going to push you. And so that's why I also want to just hold space that we also, Burning Man is that place where you're going to be uncomfortable, and sitting in that uncomfortableness and being pushed is really, really, really important. But there's a way to do that. And once it's been brought up to you that, oh, okay, this is appropriation and you're still going to use it, then that's, let's not do that.
I think that's so important to think about. It is a camp pushing people intentionally into a space of uncomfortability for a reason, because they're hoping for people to have a certain reflection. Or were they uneducated when they came up with their name? Did they simply not know? Now, if you simply don't know, then once you've been graciously told, we can hope for a Lizzo reaction, and a quick turnaround. I think the interesting space, if you approach a camp and try to bring forward that education and that, like, hey, framed within civic responsibility, I want to let you know that there is a connotation to XYZ, or to the way you're heckling, or to the way your space is set up. And it has this particular impact. I don't know if that's intentional or not, or if there is a reason for this that's been thought through. But if we hold on to that, if the camp holds on to that beyond getting that new information, that's when we've got to be hoping that people can push that bit further and be like, well, why don't you want to change your name until next year? Why is the reflection going to happen later? Well, why are we holding on to it? And why is that more important than this responsibility for radical inclusion? So I think this is all really, it's really important to think about how we can approach these things with different camps, because I know it's challenging space. It's not fun to have to approach a camp and to talk about these things, or to approach people in your own camp.
But Ruth, and can I just jump? But there also, we have to realize that there's going to be some camps that are going to get it, hear it, and then they're not going to be willing to change at all. And they're going to be like, basically, yeah, I'm just not about that. And this is what I'm going to be. Yeah. And you know what? And in my mind, I'll take that. If that happens to you, if you're listening to this call and that happens to you, then I say, okay, well, enjoy your journey, and I'll, because I'm going to give out hope. I'm going to hold out space in my mind. I'm going to create a narrative in my mind that serves me and my enjoyment. That's where you are at. You have been notified, and I'm going to let that simmer within you. And I'm going to think that a couple of more people, it's going to happen, because Burning Man, the Playa provides. It will, I'll just say this. I hope I don't get into it. I met blonde hair. My goodness, my mind just went right out of my mind. Paris Hilton. I met Paris Hilton on Playa. Talked to her for about 45 minutes. She told me she was a bitch when she first met her. She used the word. She said I was a mean person. She said I was a mean person, Prince, when I first came. And over time of coming to Burning Man, she's able to have a conversation with me. She said I didn't get it. And then 3-4 years later, she's getting it. And I had me and my husband had the best conversation with her. And I'm like, you are amazing. But she's all like, yeah, she used to be a word to describe herself. And it was like, but I'm happy that I said, you're no longer that person now. And that's great. And that's what Burning Man does. That is.
Did Prince freeze or did we all freeze?
No, it was so juicy.
That was my question too. I was wondering, I was like, I think I froze.
Are we back? Is
Okay.
everyone, can Prince pick back
I'm
up?
here.
Awesome. Okay. I think I'm not frozen now. I think we're all back in.
Yes.
I think that was such a great piece about it's not on any one individual.
Right.
You can point out, you can educate, and then you take care of yourself. You
Mhm.
move on. You know that you just have to give it that time and that space, and people will process on their own. You know, we're wanting to strike this like balance for everyone. We're not going to Burning Man for martyrdom for ourselves. You know, so we can only do what we can do. But it's good to reflect on how we can do this, have these conversations.
I want to add one more piece to conflict resolution, which is the concept of repair work. The concept of what does it look like? What does deep repair work look like? What does forgiveness work look like? And I'll say that I don't think very many people who are in US culture are familiar with this kind of work or have background in this kind of work. I think there's certain pockets of people that are trying to bring this forward. So I think we're really in this together to figure out what does repair actually look like, right? Because conflict resolution is, you want the accountability, you want people to say they're sorry, but there also has to be a time of like, what does it genuinely look like to repair? And we might honestly not know, right? Like that might just be an unknown because a lot of us have not seen that world. And I think Burning Man is always on the cutting edge, right? It's on the cutting edge of art. It's on the cutting edge of trying new things. It's a great place to take your workshop and try it out for the first time or try a performance for the first time. And so I'd be curious to see what does real repair work look like in real time, and to see some of the camps that maybe have harmed other camps to actually try to see that repair work and that forgiveness work in real time happen.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I think that's such a fantastic idea, like a way to make this to make it actionable for camps. And that really, this connects into the final topic of safety. Everything that we're talking about of conflict resolution addresses various kinds of safety. Where we don't feel safe when we're hearing certain things. We don't feel safe when we're in certain spaces. And then there is, of course, just straight up physical unsafe experiences as well. And when we've already talked so much about conflict resolution and the things that we can do, what I'm curious is, has anyone been hearing about shifts in perceptions or realities of safety on the playa? Like over however many years that we've been experiencing the playa, how have things been changing in terms of, it could be physical safety, emotional safety? What direction are we going, and what kinds of things are arising that we might need to, use these conflict resolution ideas for?
If I can chime in real quick, I want to quickly tap into something that Ariel had said before about the gift of the rangers and the resource that rangers have in the work that they've done over the years to help mitigate conflict in our community and to create safety for us. I know over the years, I have seen a progression in certain types of camps that used to happen that caused unsafe situations that then progressed and went out of fashion. And then other camps came about and then they would go out of fashion. And what would make those, and I'm not going to blatantly like name certain camps, but there were trends of camps that would suddenly happen that seemed to be more camps that seemed to victimize women, if we'll just put it that way. And then word got out, the community itself pushed back against that. And I'm sure that tools that the Rangers developed helped to educate the population as they came to Burning Man to, this type of camp is not going to work, or look out for this type of behavior. I think part of because I've been going to Burning Man for over 20 years. So I have seen these different shifts. What I'm seeing now and what we're going to walk into is going to be very interesting, because we've been dealing with all kinds of traumatic experiences that have happened off Playa that we're going to be coming to Playa with. You're going to have some people who might be in a different political state of mind. You're going to have women who, and men and folks who found their voice when it comes to Me Too. There's places that now offer safety for folks when they have been on a bad experience, and they can go and they can come down from that experience in safety. These have been put together by our community. Our community finds ways to internally resolve issues. So I think as we move into this, and in my opinion, I think it's a brand new era of how we're going to burn here in 2022, because we're going to encounter things we've never encountered before. And I'm curious to see how our community rises to the challenge of creating new safe spaces, of having their perception opened up to how they can help folks who are dealing with new things that they've never dealt with before. I mean, political trauma. I know there's going to be people out there who are dealing with that. Loss of family members due to COVID. There's going to be folks who are mourning that loss, they're not coming to Burning Man this year. So I mean, I'm just very interested to see how we're all as a community going to help to sustain each other through this period.
Yeah, I think I'm moving into Burning Man 2022 with a lot of the same sort of I wonders, and a lot has happened since we've been there last. I think the topics we've touched on today, this discussion is really illuminating. And then yet it exists in this space that we don't know what's going to come up. We've had so many things happen since the last burn. We don't know what direction camps are going to go. We don't know what space people are going to be in. I just personally thinking about being a temple guardian, that's going to be a lot. There's been a lot of things that have happened that are going to be fresh and new and maybe unique from previous years. So I think I'm really thankful that we're here having this discussion and able to reflect on how we can educate each other with love, and how we can step back to take care of ourselves, and ways that that queer camps could be part of collaborative experiences with other camps, and really encouraging non-queer camps to engage and connect, and not just at the burn, throughout the year. There's a lot of different opportunities that we have here that we've talked about. So in the interest of time, I'd love for us to transition to any questions from our speakers or from people in this call right now. We're going to start off with a question from Prince. So Prince's question is in relation to Black trans women. And so the question is, how are we individually and collectively supporting and showing up for their journey on the playa?
I remember a few years ago seeing the art piece that had been dedicated to Black trans women, and it was devastating emotionally, because every face you looked at was a person who was devalued and erased by some violent action that never should have occurred. And what I'm hoping is that there will be more of a positive uplift of trans women, Black trans women specifically, because when you look at the scale of when they look at us as Black women, there's Black women, and we're pretty low on the scale in some people's opinion on how we rate injustice in housing, in just services that are ordinarily available to others. We're usually the last on the list. Well, think below that are Black trans women. are, trans women of color. And it's devastating to think that they're just automatically victimized for who they are. Black women often feel victimized for who they are to begin with, but then to innately want to be your purest, truest self and know that you're walking into a minefield because you want to be your true self is just all kinds of brave. And you have to support that bravery in every way you can. Art, literature, being the best ally you possibly can to help them navigate any difficulty that you see arise when they're out in the streets or at the playa interacting. I mean, I can't call loudly enough for that,
I remember the art piece.
No, I was crying. That was so beautiful. That was good.
Yeah. I think it's interesting thinking about those different aspects though, how do we raise up and celebrate? And how do we support? And how do we educate? And how do we sit in that collective pain? For me individually, like just reflecting and thinking about this, it's in hoping that I can be the ally that calls out anything that I see, right? That's my space. But I'd love to hear more about, like what Ariel, what your space would be, what anyone else's space on this call would be.
Something that I really appreciate about Gender Blender is that we are holding this space for trans people, and that we're definitely holding space for Black trans women, and that this has always been part of who we are. And honestly, though, I think that Burning Man in general, I feel like I'd be curious to see the census on how many Black trans women are on Playa, and how do we then maybe increase that number? How do we increase safety all around for Black trans people, for all trans people, right? There's like a real issue of, I think if you go back to like, why do people not come to Playa, right? Right, I think there's a couple of things happening. I think there's economics, but I also think people are constantly questioning, like, is that a space for me? Am I going to be safe there? Am I going to be welcome there? And I think that's something that all camps can do, is education around safety, education around welcoming and inclusivity, and really taking on this piece of the radical inclusion. And I think something that's interesting is that if you think about Burning Man, there's two camps, Gender Blender and Beaverton, that have been consistently holding down certain communities, and there's no other camps doing it, right? So if you're a gay man and you come to Burning Man, at this point, you have like 20 camps that you can choose from, right? Which means if for whatever reason you're like, this camp isn't doing what I need to do, like this just doesn't have the right mission, or it's not fitting my ideals, or my ex is in this camp, you have another camp you can go to, right? But it's like, if you are a lesbian, you have Beaverton, right? It's like, there's not another dyke camp on Playa. If you are a trans person or a non-binary person or a genderqueer person, you have Gender Blender. And that's awesome that we've been holding it down. But honestly, like Beaverton started 2008, we started 2009. This is a lot of years. Like at this point, and I used to be really proud of it. Like I used to be like, oh, we're the camp, like we're the ones. And now I'm like, wait, no, like there needs to be an expansion. There needs to be many trans camps, many non-binary camps. Like it would be awesome if there was a whole camp just for Black trans women, right? Like, right, because it's like, we can't cover everybody's needs. Like just no camp can. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there needs to be multiple camps. Like, yes, we are so proud to be here, to be making sure that all trans people feel safe and comfortable. But what I'm saying is, it's like, why is there consistently just certain camps? Like there's only one POC camp. There's only one K-Viva camp. Like what would it look like if it was just like way more expansive, right? So that you could have way more spaces to go and not feel like, oh, there's only one camp trying to hold all of the needs for all of these people that fit under this gigantic umbrella, right? So that's the piece that I'm trying to see now. Like I would love to see an expansion. Like I would love to come to Burning Man and be like, there are 20 trans camps at Burning Man, like the same as there are 20 gay male camps, right? Like let's do this. And same thing with Beaverton, right? Because like they've been holding it down for queer women this whole time. So what does it look like for there to be multiple queer women camps on Playa?
I think sometimes it seems that the queer community at Burning Man can be perceived as just this monolith. And you're right. I mean, there's just because you're gay doesn't mean there's a specific type of behavior or box you fall into. And that's what part of coming to Burning Man should be an education about for people who are non-queer. You know, they can see, yeah, we are all a panoply of behaviors and lifestyles and what we enjoy and what we all get involved in. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, so let's make that happen.
Yes. And the other thing that I want to say about this is that we have, like, Gender Blender has a specific mission around social justice that I'm really proud of, that we all are really proud of as a camp. I also think there's something really valuable about just having a space that's about celebration or party, right? And like, we do that too. We throw an amazing smoothie party. We throw really fun play parties. We do a lot of fun as well. Like, fun is definitely a part of what we are doing. But like, I want to see a trans camp that's just straight up like, we are here to celebrate. This is about fun. We're not educating anyone, right? Like that doesn't exist right now. Like, we've always had two missions. We've always had two missions. One of them is to be a safe and fun space for trans and non-binary people, and we're doing that. But we have also always said that we're educating the larger public. And so that means that that's a lot of responsibility to carry as a camp, right? And I'm down to keep carrying that responsibility, but I would love to see other camps that are like, what we do is just make like really fun whatever and hand it out, you know, like we're just making candy and giving it out, or making bacon and giving it out, or eggs or whatever, right? Like, and just having it be super fun. Like, here's your root beer float. Like, we're not having a whole political social justice thing. Like, I just think there should also be trans camps that are like straight up just about some other mission that's not as intense. And we can keep holding this down and other people can join us too, but like, there needs to just be more of us in general.
I think that it puts it beautifully, that when we're talking about RIDE, we're not only talking about educating, we're not only talking about these difficult experiences or the ways that we're hoping for things to improve. We're also talking about like celebrating this diversity and envisioning a Burning Man that has dozens of camps fulfilling this celebration of all of these different kinds of unique people that we have there would be incredible. And I think on that really sort of uplifting, optimistic note of where Burning Man can go and the ways that we can move in that direction to try to really support and educate, but also celebrate. I think we're at time. I want to absolutely thank our 3 guest speakers. This has been an incredible conversation. It's been really illuminating for me. I feel like there is direction. You know, if you're listening to this call later on, you haven't gotten to the burn yet, maybe you're the week before Burning Man and you're like, oh, maybe I should think about some of these issues before I go. I hope you feel more equipped to, you know, call in, to educate with love, to think about how you can collaborate with other camps, how you can bridge these gaps, support each other, and also celebrate. And celebrate this diversity and uniqueness that we're talking about right now.
And I just want to end by sharing one more piece about Gender Blender, which is that we are still welcoming new campers. And we would love to also welcome collaborations with queer and non-queer camps. And if you're out there and you're thinking, how do you find us? Our website is genderillumination.com, shining light on gender.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, Prince. Thank you, Tia. Thank you to all of our queer burners here. Thank you to everyone who is listening later on. See you on the playa.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Toaster. Thanks, Prince.
Hey, Prince, a friend requested you, if you're open to it, accept it. But yeah, hi.
Yes,
Hi again.
100%. Yes.
We're also still recording.
Oh, shoot. Hold on.
This is like on the Facebook